Welcome to Creation Conversations. These discussions are generated from my original writings to explore consciousness, reality, and the natural laws of creation in a conversational format. I hope you enjoy the discussion.
Have you ever noticed how when you stumble into a deeply philosophical conversation, or maybe you're just listening to a friend talk about their shifting worldview, people tend to use these incredibly massive words completely interchangeably.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely all the time.
Right, like they will say God, or they'll say source, or maybe the universe, or, creation, and they just sort of assume everyone in the room is operating from the exact same dictionary.
Yeah, it's like a verbal shorthand. We use these terms to describe anything that feels, well, more complex than our daily lives.
Exactly. We just nod along, treating these colossal concepts like they are all just convenient synonyms pulled from the same spiritual thesaurus.
And the underlying assumption there is that because the words are so expansive, the meaning must be universally understood. But, assuming universal meaning for abstract concepts is exactly where our understanding of reality starts to get incredibly messy.
Yeah, it really does. And that messiness is exactly what we are going to untangle in today's deep dive. We are looking at some really fascinating excerpts from a text called The Architecture of Existence and Creation.
It's a really dense piece of writing.
It is, yeah. Specifically, we're zooming in on a piece that explores the razor-sharp distinctions between existence, creation, source, and God.
Which is so important because the core premise of the source material we're examining today suggests that using these terms interchangeably doesn't merely cause, a little semantic confusion.
It's much bigger than that.
Exactly. It fundamentally distorts how we process the mechanics of reality. According to this framework, having precision in our language changes everything about how we interact with the world around us.
It changes everything. But before we jump in, I do want to give a quick but important disclaimer for you listening.
Very necessary here, yeah.
Yeah. So the definitions we are unpacking today come directly from a very specific set of teachings. In the text, they are referred to as the teaching of the truth, the teaching of the spirit, which is also called creation life energy, and the teaching of the life, which the text sometimes refers to by the German term Geisteslehre.
Right, Geisteslehre.
Yeah. And our goal today is absolutely not to endorse these viewpoints or push a specific theology or take a side on the ultimate nature of reality.
We are simply impartial guides to the material provided. That's it.
Exactly. We just want to explore how totally redefining our vocabulary can completely alter how we see the universe. Whether you end up agreeing with the source material or not, it's really just an intellectual thought experiment in precision.
And a really compelling one at that.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
To understand this framework, we really have to start at the absolute highest level. We need to zoom all the way out to the literal container of reality itself. In this teaching, that container is called existence.
Right. And when the text says existence, it literally means the all. It is the absolute totality of everything, past, present, and future.
The all. So it's everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
The author is incredibly explicit on this point. Nothing exists outside of existence. It is the ultimate boundary, except, it possesses no actual boundary.
Okay, so it includes the material universe we can observe through telescopes, but also the non-material or spiritual realms, right?
Exactly. Both sides of the coin.
Because the text specifically notes a term here, arahat athersata. And I'm struggling with the jargon a bit. What exactly does that mean in the context of existence?
Yeah, it's a specific term. So in the framework of the Geisteslehre, Ara Atherana translates roughly to a highly evolved spiritual sphere.
Okay.
It represents a level of pure non-material energy that exists far beyond our physical comprehension or current evolutionary state.
So it's way beyond what we can just see or touch.
Right. And the text uses that term to illustrate the sheer scale of existence. Existence holds the physical atoms and the swirling galaxies, but it also holds these unimaginably complex spiritual dimensions, every law of physics and every single evolutionary possibility.
Wow. So it's not just the stuff, it's the rules governing the stuff too.
Exactly. Existence is simply the canvas, the paint, the frame, and the museum, all functioning as one unified whole.
Okay, but here's where the text makes its first major divergence from how most people talk about these things. Because in standard conversation, you might hear a philosopher or theologian say, all of existence is God's creation, blurring the lines into one big concept.
Right, they mash them together.
Yeah. But in this teaching, existence and creation are two completely distinct concepts, and I'm struggling to see where the boundary is. I mean, if existence is the all-encompassing container, wouldn't creation just be a synonym for that container?
Well, no.
Yeah.
And that distinction is the linchpin of this entire philosophy. Creation is not the container.
It's not.
No, creation is a phenomenon that occurred inside the container. The text states that creation arose within existence billions upon billions of years ago.
Okay, so it's a subset of existence.
Exactly. Furthermore, the text defines creation not as a personality, not as a cosmic CEO managing human affairs from a throne room, but as a universal, natural, creational consciousness.
Meaning it is entirely impersonal.
Generally, it operates completely without a personality. Now, it is infinite in wisdom, it serves as the origin point for all natural laws, and it is continuously evolving.
But it doesn't have, feelings or preferences.
Right. It is not a being that you can petition, bargain with, or have a conversation with.
Okay, I want to try an analogy here to see if I'm mapping this out correctly.
Go for it.
So, if existence is the infinite, boundless ocean that holds absolutely everything, the water, the life forms, the trenches, is creation kind of like the prevailing thermal current moving through that ocean?
Oh, that's interesting.
A current isn't the ocean itself, but it dictates how energy moves. It follows strict natural laws of thermodynamics, and it doesn't care if you're a majestic whale or just a piece of driftwood. It just moves you according to its physics.
That analogy actually captures the mechanics perfectly,
Oh, nice.
because the current possesses immense power and direction, and it operates on immutable laws of fluid dynamics, but it doesn't have a personal vendetta against the driftwood,
Yeah.
It is merely functioning.
It's just doing what a current does.
Exactly. And this brings us to one of the most provocative claims in the text.
Yeah.
Because this creational consciousness is impersonal, it does not judge.
Right.
It does not punish. It does not reward. And it absolutely does not intervene to answer prayers.
See, that is a massive paradigm shift for anyone raised in a traditional faith. But I have to push back a little bit here on something that text claims. It describes this creation consciousness as neutral positive. Now, if it is just this blind current of cause and effect, how does a framework reconcile a neutral force with the absolute chaos, the injustice, and the suffering we see in the material universe? I mean, if it's neutral, where does the positive part come in?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the positive and neutral positive doesn't mean good in a human moral sense.
Okay, because normally when we say positive, we mean happy or good.
Exactly. Humans tend to define positive as, things going the way I want them to go without pain. But in this teaching, positive means forward-moving, constructive, and fundamentally evolutionary.
So it's about progression, not comfort.
Right. The complete lack of judgment, punishment, or reward is the very mechanism that makes it neutral. It is a pure, unadulterated system of cause and effect.
Okay, so instead of a simplistic example like touching a hot stove, let's look at something larger, like human history.
Okay, let's do that.
If a society builds its foundation on unsustainable extraction and exploitation, well, that is the cause. The neutral effect is that the society eventually collapses under its own systemic weight. Creation isn't stepping in to punish that society for being morally wicked, right? It's just sociological physics playing out.
Exactly. It's just the math of the universe.
But the positive aspect of that neutral cause and effect is the evolutionary pressure the collapse creates. The survivors are forced to synthesize that data and build better, more sustainable systems.
You nailed it. The system is designed for learning through consequence, and it is governed strictly by natural laws. It doesn't need a moral judge, because the mathematical reality of cause and effect handles the teaching automatically.
The consequence is the teacher.
Yes. Every action generates data, and that data forces evolution.
Okay, but if this macro current is completely impersonal, how does the individual human experience even register in this vast machinery? This brings us from the cosmos down to the individual. Where are we in the current?
According to this text, we are intimately wired into it. The teaching states that every human being carries within them a microscopic fragment of this creation.
Inside of us.
Yes. They call it the spirit form, or the creation life energy.
Wow, okay, so a tiny fragment of the current itself is actually embedded inside us.
That's the idea. And because it is a literal fragment of creation, it shares those overarching attributes.
Mm.
This spirit form is immortal. It is never severed or entirely separate from the greater macro creation.
So it's always connected.
Always.
Yeah.
And it is constantly, perpetually evolving through countless reincarnations.
Okay, so reincarnation is a major mechanism in this puzzle. It is the vehicle for that continuous evolution.
It is the vehicle, yeah.
But the text makes a very sharp point here about the nature of this spirit form. It says that this fragment is never to be worshipped. And more importantly, its ultimate purpose is not salvation.
Which is a huge statement. That concept completely dismantles the foundation of many traditional belief systems.
Absolutely. So what does this all mean for you listening? If there is no salvation to be attained, and we've already established that creation isn't sitting up there answering prayers or handing out divine rewards, then the responsibility falls entirely on the individual's shoulders, right? Nobody is coming to rescue you.
Right. The shift moves the human experience entirely away from a dynamic of seeking rescue, absolution, or favor from a higher power.
Because that power doesn't operate that way.
Exactly. So if the purpose of your spirit form is not salvation, what is it doing? The text tells us its purpose is evolution.
Just constantly growing.
It evolves by gathering data, through knowledge, through wisdom, through love, through lived experience, and by learning the hard way to align with those immutable creational laws we just discussed.
It's basically saying you have a piece of the ultimate reality engine inside of you. Your job isn't to bow down to it. Your job is to figure out how to drive it.
I like that. You are tasked with aligning your personal microcurrent with the macrocurrent. But this introduces a really crucial tension of the source material. If the mechanics of existence, creation, and the spirit are so clearly delineated, why is humanity historically so confused?
Right, why the mess?
Why do we have thousands of different religions, sects, and philosophies continuously going to war over these concepts?
Well, the text points the finger directly at the muddy, ambiguous labels we rely on today, which brings us right back to our opening hook. The two biggest culprits the text identifies for this global confusion are the words source and God.
Let's examine source first. It's an incredibly popular term right now, especially in modern New Age spirituality and wellness spaces.
Oh, you hear it everywhere. People talk about connecting to source or channeling source energy.
And the text explicitly notes that source is not an official term within this creation energy teaching. The author acknowledges that many people use it as a modern synonym for creation, but the inherent danger is its ambiguity.
Because nobody actually knows what it means.
Right. Because it lacks a precise, universally agreed-upon definition, source operates as a linguistic blank check. It means entirely different things to different people.
Depending on who you ask.
Exactly. To one person, it might mean the impersonal universe of physics, but to another, it functions as a modern rebrand of a personal prayer-answering deity that, helps them find a parking spot.
Right, it is just a placeholder word. It sounds profound, but it doesn't actually clarify the mechanism of reality, which is why this teaching argues so fiercely for precise terminology.
Yeah.
But if source is just vague, the word God, according to this text, is historically loaded with massive foundational misunderstandings.
Yes. The text argues that throughout human history, the word God has been used to describe a sprawling grab bag of different, often contradictory ideas.
Oh, definitely.
Sometimes it refers to an imaginary supernatural creator, essentially a psychological projection of human ideals, authorities, and deep-seated fears.
Kind of like a giant parent in the sky.
Exactly. And in other eras, it simply represents humanity's naive attempt to explain environmental phenomena they didn't have the scientific method to understand yet, like lightning, droughts, or plagues.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting and introduces a historical mechanism that completely diverges from standard theology. Because the text claims that sometimes the word God has referred to powerful extraterrestrial human beings who came to Earth and were mistakenly worshipped as gods by early humanity.
Yeah, that is a huge point. This raises an important question about the actual mechanism of myth-making.
I mean, that is a massive departure from standard thought. It introduces the idea that some of our oldest spiritual texts might actually be misinterpretations of physical, historical events. And again, for you listening, we are just reporting what is in this source material. We aren't asking you to adopt the idea that ancient astronauts built human religions or anything like that.
Right, we're just analyzing the text.
But the text explains how this misunderstanding happened, and it is a fascinating thought experiment.
It really is. Think about it through the lens of Arthur C. Clarke's famous law. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Oh, sure.
If early human civilizations, which possessed no framework for astrophysics, genetics, or advanced medicine, suddenly encountered beings utilizing flight or advanced technology, they wouldn't have the vocabulary to describe it as engineering.
No, they'd have no context for that.
They would use the only vocabulary they had, magic and divinity. The mechanism of religion in those specific instances was just a fundamental misunderstanding of physics.
Bringing it up illustrates perfectly why the authors of this text urge us to look past traditional labels. I mean, if the word God can mean a psychological projection, a thunderstorm, or a literal extraterrestrial in a spacecraft, depending on who you ask and what era you're in, the word itself becomes completely useless for finding actual truth.
It's too cluttered.
Right. The baggage attached to the word obscures the reality underneath it.
And this is exactly why the Geisteslehre heavily advises moving away from the concept of belief entirely.
Oh, belief itself.
Yeah. Belief, by definition, implies accepting something as true without verifiable proof or an understanding of the underlying mechanism. The teaching advocates moving toward knowledge and understanding based on the reality of cause and effect.
They want you to observe the natural laws playing out in your life rather than just believing in a comforting label.
Yes, observation over blind faith.
So if we accept that these labels, source, God, are inherently broken tools, what does this text suggest we build in their place? Like, how do we actually evaluate a philosophy if we just throw out its name? This brings us to the synthesis of all these massive concepts.
Which is where it gets really practical.
Yeah. Because we've separated the ocean of existence from the current of creation, we found the little spark of spirit inside us, and we've discarded the messy labels. So how does this change the way we interact with other people's philosophies today?
Well, the author of the source material notes a very profound shift in their own personal consciousness as they studied this framework. They observed that their attachment to labels just gradually faded away.
They stop fighting over the wrapping paper, essentially.
That's a great way to put it. The author says that before they see a specific religion, a philosophy, or a specific name for a deity, they now attempt to see creation first.
They look for the mechanism.
Exactly. They look for the underlying natural reality. Everything else, the elaborate dogmas, the rituals, the specific names, just becomes humanity's attempt to describe that reality from whatever level of scientific or spiritual understanding they possessed at the time.
We fight over words like God or source because defending a label requires zero internal change. Like, it is infinitely easier to go to war over a name or argue semantics on the internet than it is to take radical responsibility for your own evolutionary current.
What's fascinating here is how that shifts the entire metric of spiritual value. It's a much more compassionate way to look at world religions, but the text is careful to state this doesn't mean all teachings are equally accurate.
Right, it's not saying everything is true.
Exactly. It isn't a relativistic free-for-all where every idea is perfectly true just because someone believes it. It introduces a new, highly functional filter. Instead of asking, does this teaching use the right words? Or does it come from my preferred historical tradition? The new question is simply, what truth is being expressed here?
And the metric for that truth is very specific and actionable. The author asks, does this idea encourage wisdom? Does it encourage personal responsibility? Does it promote love, self-development, and harmony with the natural laws of cause and effect?
The criteria is entirely functional. If an idea or a teaching meets those benchmarks, if it genuinely helps a human being evolve their consciousness, minimize suffering, and take ownership of their actions, then it possesses inherent value.
The packaging doesn't matter.
Right. It doesn't matter if it comes wrapped in the language of Buddhism, Christianity, secular humanism, or a modern psychology book. The utility of the truth outshines the label it carries.
It completely disarms the tribalism that usually dominates spiritual or philosophical debates. You stop defending your flag and start looking for actual useful tools for personal evolution.
Yes. The ultimate task of a human being, according to this synthesis, isn't to argue over terminology. It isn't to defend a specific label to the death to prove you are right. The task is to evolve our consciousness through reality.
It really is a call for radical self-responsibility, isn't it? And critical thinking.
It is. You have to look at the world, observe the brutal and beautiful laws of cause and effect, and do the incredibly hard work of aligning yourself with them.
It is empowering, but it is also deeply daunting. I mean, it is so much easier to just ask a higher power to fix things for you, or to blame the devil when things go wrong. Taking ownership of every cause and every effect in your life, recognizing that you are generating the data of your own evolution, well, it requires an immense amount of heavy lifting.
It requires stripping away all of our comforting illusions. But as the text suggests, it is the only actual path to lasting wisdom.
Well, this has been a truly mind-bending journey. We've zoomed out to the absolute edges of existence. We've waded through the impersonal, thermodynamic currents of creation, looked inward at the immortal spirit form gathering data across lifetimes, and completely dismantled the vocabulary we usually use to talk about all of it.
It's a lot to process, for sure.
It really is. I want to thank you, the listener, for exploring this incredibly dense but genuinely fascinating architecture of reality with us today. Because whether you adopt this specific framework or think it's totally out there, it proves how precise language can completely reframe how we view our place in the universe. When we change our words, we really can change our world.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thread to pull on, something that builds on this idea of the spirit form and the neutral positive nature of creation.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
So we discussed that the fragment of creation inside of you fundamentally does not judge, it does not punish. It only operates on the neutral positive law of cause and effect, gathering data for your evolution.
Right.
So if the very core of your spiritual makeup is entirely non-judgmental, then where does our uniquely human instinct to ruthlessly judge ourselves come from?
Oh, wow. That is a heavy question.
Think about it. What if, starting today, you viewed your daily mistakes, the blown presentation, the argument with a friend, the bad habit, not as moral failures that require intense guilt and self-punishment, but simply as neutral cause and effect data?
Just feedback.
Exactly. Data that is designed solely to help you adjust your trajectory and evolve. How much lighter would your life feel if you stopped acting as your own punisher and just started operating as a learner?
That is definitely something to chew on. Next time you're at that dinner party and someone starts throwing around those massive interchangeable words, maybe just smile, take a sip of your drink, and think about the neutral positive current quietly running through the room. We will catch you on the next deep dive.